Hi, welcome to Nina in the Kitchen, where today I am making rye bread. It's an Eastern European rye, or some people call it Jewish Deli Rye. This recipe is exactly like what you would be served in a New York deli. It's excellent. What makes it excellent is the crispy crust. It's light, but it's crispy, it's delicious. And then the crumb. The crumb is not fluffy. The crumb is dense on it. So if you have a soggy sandwich like corned beef or a drippy roast beef sandwich or something, this bread will not fall apart in your hands. So let's get started. I have 1.5 cups of warm water. It's about 105 degrees. And you always start with water when you use a mixer. Then flour. This is 1.5 cups of rye flour and 1.5 cups of all-purpose white. You can use bread flour if you like. I've made this recipe many times, and frankly, I can't tell the difference between the two because of the crumb being so tight. I have 1.5 teaspoons of instant yeast in here. And I like that because you don't have to proof it, so that just gets dumped in. And I have 1.5 teaspoons of sugar. Yeast and sugar like each other, so I put them in at the same time. I also have 2 tablespoons of shortening, and you can also use just a vegetable oil for that. So I'm going to blend this all up, slowly add the rest of this white flour, then add salt, and let this run for about 3 minutes on medium speed. Okay, well, 3 minutes is up, and as you can see, this dough it's not like a regular white flour dough. And the reason for that is that rye flour does not have very much gluten in it, so that's why you supplement with the white. This is actually a nice dough. It's not sticking to my hands, and so I'm going to leave it like this. I don't have to adjust the liquid or the flour in this, so I'm going to let this run for another 8 minutes after the addition of salt. I don't want to put the salt in right away because yeast does not like salt. And this dough is strange. It's because it's got the rye flour in it, it's more like a modeling clay than other bread doughs that you might associate with. So you don't have the same visual cues or tactile cues as with other breads, but just trust it, keep going with it. This is a delicious loaf of bread. So I'm going to add salt, and I also wanted to mention I'm adding a tablespoon of caraway seed. You don't have to. If you don't want a whole seed, you can grind it up and put in the little flecks of seed, but I like that bite of sweetness from the caraway. If you don't like caraway, leave it out, doesn't matter. So I'm going to up the speed to, that was on like a low medium. I'm going to increase the speed to about medium, and I'll knead this for 8 minutes, and I'll see you after that. Okay, well, 8 minutes is up. In the last minute, I put the caraway seeds in here. And there is something else I want to mention about rye flour, and that is that eventually, if you're doing this especially by hand, you'll see it's sticky at first, but then eventually it does become somewhat elastic. That is a visual cue for you. And as far as rye flour, you know, maybe in different parts of the country, you can buy it in supermarkets still, but I can't find it where I live. So what I do is I go to a store called Bulk Nation. If you have one near you, they sell flours, and one of the flours that they sell is a rye flour. Of course, you can buy it online, as we all know. So what I'm doing is I'm going to take this out of this bowl. Rye flour will leave this sort of sticky. Like I said, it's like a modeling clay. And it doesn't feel like a white flour, but you can see, even though it's an odd texture, it doesn't stick to my hands. So what I'm going to do is just form it into a ball before I put it into my greased bowl. And you may want to use a spatula. If you're using your hands to do this, sometimes wetting your hands will help. It depends on the kind of rye flour that you get. This is a King Arthur rye. King Arthur and Pillsbury, I know, make rye flour. They make a light rye flour and also a medium. And the medium has just a little stronger flavor. They're both delicious. And it's just a matter of taste as to which one you like. I've always gone King Arthur. And all that I'm going to do, you really don't want to add flour to this at this point, but I'm just going to feel this and make sure that it really is not sticky all the way through and it feels really good. So now all that you do is I'm just going to form this into a ball, and this matters in that it forms a tension across the surface of your bread, and it will help it rise better, and I think it gives a better crumb as well. So you just make a little ball and you push it towards you and push it towards you. Now, if you're doing an artisan bread and you want to leave it round like this is actually a very important technique to know. Then what's at the bottom, you see it's nice and smooth all the way around. There's no seams or anything, but how you want to shape your bread is up to you. I'm going to do the traditional log shape, but first we're going to rise this. This will take about, depending on how hot your kitchen is, anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So I'll see you when this doubles in size. This is going into a greased bowl, lightly greased. I put it in. I flip it over just to get the grease all the way around the dough. Flip it back, give it a little pat for good luck. I'm covering this with plastic wrap, and then just so that it can breathe somewhat, because otherwise you'll have condensation form on the underside of the plastic, which you really don't need. So I just put a few holes in it, and I'll see you in an hour and a half when this is doubled in size. Well, I'm back. It's been about an hour and a half, and this is the dough. There's something so satisfying about making a yeast bread. I don't know why, but isn't that beautiful? So what I do now is I don't want to keep adding flour to this. So I'm just going to take some, I have canola oil. I'm just putting some on my hands and kind of spreading it on my counter, or you can do it on your cutting board. And I've weighed this without the bowl. It weighs 834 grams. So I'm going to put my scale on. You have two choices. You can cut this and make 2 small loaves, or you can leave this. Remember, this is half of a recipe for 2 large loaves of bread. And each loaf should weigh about 417. And the reason I weigh them, oh boy, that's almost exact. That was 420, 418, okay, I'm happy with that. The reason for weighing your dough is because I have found that it really does make a difference. You get a better bake when both are equal size. So now you can see this is not sticking to me at all. And all I'm doing is I'm going to make this into a little square, a little rectangle, I should say. And fold it in like 2 ears. And then just roll it, and you roll and you pinch, you roll and you pinch. And you just keep doing that. At the ends, now you have a seam side down, you pinch this, and you can push into this little end. Push that underneath. I'm going to show you again. Here's the end. I take my knuckle and push it in, pinch it, and then that goes, you create a little flap, so all of your seams are on one side. This is going to rise. Now the second rise is always faster. This is going to take about 35-40 minutes. And as soon as it's risen properly, this goes into the oven. I have a prepared sheet pan over here. And when you do any bread, what happens is you put it into a hot oven, something happens called oven spring. It just kind of pops it a little bit more. You can only get that oven spring if you don't overproof your bread. When you overproof bread, you'll see that when you put it in the oven, it's kind of out of shape. So I'll show you what a good loaf looks like, and you'll know when you're there. So these are going to rest under the same piece of plastic I used the last time. And before it goes into the oven, we're just going to slash this. I'll look at this in about a half hour, see how it looks. Well, it has been exactly 30 minutes, and let me show you what this looks like. They look a little bloated. Now this one, if you can see, has, it's kind of bumpier than this one. This one is on its way to being overproofed. So, and what will happen in the oven when it hits that oven spring is you'll have a blowout. So what you do to control that and control how your bread rises in the oven is you slash it. I'm using a serrated knife. You can use a single-edged razor blade, but you want something that's very sharp. And I'm going in about a ½ inch. On a bigger loaf, I would do maybe 6 slashes. The other reason for slashing bread is in commercial bakeries, if you think about it, in olden days where they used, well, they still use wooden ovens or coal-fired ovens, all the breads come out with a brown crust. So you couldn't tell sometimes between the rye bread and the pumpernickel, let's say, so they slashed them differently so that the person working the front counter could just turn around and identify the bread that they were going for. So, okay, that's why you slash it. This is going into a 425 degree oven. After 15 minutes, I'm turning it down to 400. Now these are small loaves. They'll take, at 400, they'll take about 15 minutes. And so a total of 30 minutes in the oven. If they were larger loaves, it would take 25 to 30 minutes once you turn your oven down. And here I have ice cubes. I'll put about 5 of these in the bottom of the oven. Another way to do it is you can put a tray down there. I have the rack of my oven set into the middle lower third part of the oven. Before this goes in, the last thing you do, I have egg white here and milk. And the reason here is you want this is going to help create that beautiful glaze and that great crust that this bread is famous for. The reason for using egg white as opposed to egg yolk is that egg yolk is going to help brown things. So egg yolk is good to use as a glaze if you're doing something that bakes for a short time, like a croissant or a piece of Danish pastry that's small. You can use egg yolk there, but for a bread where it stays in the oven for a longer time, always use egg white. Using egg yolk is going to brown it a little too much. Between the steam that's going to be created in the oven by putting the ice cubes in the bottom, and between that and this glaze, we're going to have a beautiful bread in about a ½ hour. Well, the bread came out of the oven. When it was baking, at about 7 minutes, I turned my pan and I put another glaze on it because I just love this crust. So I wanted to emphasize the crust. And so I did the additional egg wash. And at that point, I could have added seeds to this since I have caraway inside. but I don't care for seeds on the outside of a bread because they end up all over your house. So this is the rye bread. Let's break into it. I'm just going to take, I call this the nose. I'm just going to take the nose off. But here's the crumb. You see, it's a nice tight crumb. So, and of course, if you made the larger bread, it would be twice this size. But I like these small loaves for us. Anyway, this will hold any drippy sandwich that you have. It's delicious with ham and cheese, rye with ham and cheese, rye with tuna salad, roast beef, turkey, corned beef, pastrami. I'm going to do a video with two sandwiches. One is going to be corned beef, and the other is going to be a Reuben. So I'll do that as soon as I taste this, and I can't wait. This is so delicious, and with the caraway seeds in it, it's special. It's got the right tang, the perfect crispy little bite in the crust. It's chewy. This is New York deli style rye bread. Fantastic. I hope you try this recipe. Please follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and ninainthekitchen.net for recipes. I hope to see you back here on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Bye guys.